should Arsenal change their captaincy? So you see, the thing is that when I went on social media and I went online, I came across an interview from Tony Adams where he talked about Martin Odegaard and Declan Rice, and he believed that Arsenal are at a point now where they need to change their captain and remove it from Odegaard and give it to Declan Rice. And now I can understand why they would want to do that. I get the reasoning behind it. Basically, Tony Adams says that Martin Odegaard just doesn't have that sort of personality that Declan Rice has in terms of motivating a team and doing what needs to be done to get over the line and win. And Tony Adams basically urged Mikel Arteta to go from a good manager to a winning manager. And a lot of people are expecting that Arsenal finally at the season win major trophies, or whether it's the league or whether it's the Champions League. But this is the season essentially for Arsenal to do it, especially when Arsenal have got Victor Gyökeres. Now, for me, with Martin Odegaard, it's very clear that last season it wasn't a good season for him. Like, just honestly, it hasn't been that good statistically, injury wise. It just was very poor, and there were a lot of games where he did look like a passenger in my opinion, and a lot of people put it down to many things: the tactics, the formations, the system, the fact that Arteta keeps telling his players to put it out wide and cross it into the box. And we have to ask ourselves, is that sustainable, and will that allow players like Martin Odegaard to flourish? Because Martin Odegaard plays in the 10 role. A lot of people have been saying that he's more suited to playing in the 8, and I think that there are possible reasons why I can agree with that. And when people look at Declan Rice, we see a guy that comes to the interviews, he's always in press conferences, he's always talking to the media, the way he speaks, the way he comes across, it is very captain-like. And this is a guy that's captained West Ham for many years, a guy that's helped them win their first European trophy in God knows how long or ever, and he's a player that essentially went for a marquee price of around over £100 million, one of England's top midfielders and one of the best defensive midfielders in the world essentially at the time. So that's why a lot of people are looking at Declan Rice and the way he comes across and saying, you know what, maybe he needs to be the guy to be captain. Because the other criticism that people have of Martin Odegaard is whether or not he performs in big games and whether or not he steps up. And don't get me wrong, I think there are games when Martin Odegaard does step up in, especially in the 22-23 season. I remember games where we'd be a goal down and he'd come in and try and help Arsenal win certain games. Now, in terms of as of recently and as of last season, whether you put it down to injury or whatever, Martin Odegaard just hasn't looked very good. And the thing is that with me, I understand completely what Tony Adams is getting at. And for all the Arsenal fans that are criticizing Tony Adams, like, yeah, as a manager he wasn't great, but we gotta remember this is a guy that's won 4 league titles for Arsenal Football Club. He is Mr. Arsenal. He is probably Arsenal's greatest ever captain, so he knows a bit about captaincy and what it takes to win the big trophies, the big majors. And he's as much of an Arsenal fan as anybody, and if there's anyone from Arsenal that we should listen to, it's him, because of everything that he's done and everything that he was able to achieve at Arsenal, despite the flaws that he did have throughout his career. Now, well, should Martin Odegaard be stripped of the captaincy? I think there's reason to suggest that maybe he should be, and maybe Arsenal are at a point where they need to change things up and really shake things about, and maybe with Rice coming in as captain and providing a different style of captaincy throughout the entire team and allowing Odegaard to reduce his responsibilities, maybe it might allow him to flourish. However, the other side is that throughout this entire project, Odegaard has been the captain. He has been the guy essentially, and whenever we see him on the pitch, he's always telling the other players to push on and to put pressure on the other team. Like, you always see him waving his arms around like that. That's something that I will give him credit for. And the thing is that if you do decide to remove the captaincy, will that cause a knock-on effect and cause a negative atmosphere in the dressing room? And this is a situation that's going to be hard for the manager, in which is it worth taking that risk of disrupting your dressing room if you do decide to remove the captaincy of Martin Odegaard, especially after all this time, when he, outside of the pitch, hasn't really done anything wrong? It's more of the case of he just hasn't been performing up to the standards in which he should have. And I think it's going to be very telling next season what happens. I mean, for me, for a player, you could have one bad season, okay, that happens, but to have 2 bad seasons in a row, that's going to be very bad, essentially, for anybody. And that's why we even talk about, say, for example, with Martinelli, where he has hasn't been performing consistently well for a couple of seasons now. But that's besides the point. I think with Martin Odegaard, I think there are reasons to believe on why he should be dropped from the captaincy, but there are other reasons why he should also keep it. But I think it's something that Tony Adams understands, and I think that a lot of people are saying because Declan Rice is British and English, that's also that's that side of the story as well. But in my opinion, I think Tony Adams has a point, and I think it's going to be down to Martin Odegaard this season for him to perform. He needs to perform at his very best, and I think the main thing for me in terms of my assessment of Odegaard this season is how well does he shoot, and will he score goals, because that is something that we're going to need him to do. Will he score goals? Will he get assists? Will he provide that creative spark? If he's just going to keep passing it to the wings and do crosses and just play like that, then for me that's not a good sign, because for me as a captain, yes, the manager may give you the tactics, but you're the one playing on the field, and you're the one that has to dictate how to play and what things you need to do. Maybe you might need to make a pass out of nowhere, maybe you need to do a long ball, maybe you need to take a shot yourself. And I think that's my main criticism of Martin Odegaard, in the sense that he just doesn't take enough decisions himself on the pitch, such as taking a shot, for example, and when you're in the right spaces and helping the team in that way. Sometimes you need to do things individually or change things up tactics wise in order to win the game. And I think with Martin Odegaard as the captain, that's something that I expect more from. And for me, over the last season, he just hasn't done that, and I think that has caused questions of his captaincy to come about, especially through the loss of form and the decision making on the pitch. But overall, I want to support Martin Odegaard. I want to back the captain essentially, and I want him to perform well and perform at the level that I believe he can do, and that's going to involve getting into those attacking areas, shooting the ball a lot more, and just being offensively aggressive, in my opinion. Because if he doesn't become that, then I think we're going to go into a direction where we will need to take the captaincy off Martin Odegaard. And with Tony Adams, he said that with Martin Odegaard, he doesn't believe that Arsenal will win any major trophies, which is very damning, but that might be the motivation he needs to push on and prove people wrong. And you never know, maybe with Declan Rice, if he does become captain, maybe we might perform very differently, but that is for the manager to do. And it's a tough decision, but tough decisions got to be made, especially when it comes to winning. Anyhow, that's the end of this video. Very tough decisions for Arsenal and very big statements from Tony Adams, but I think this is something that a lot of people need to hear, especially with Martin Odegaard, and essentially they need to perform. But anyhow, please like and subscribe. Hope to see you soon in the next video. Catch you later. Bye bye.